Okay, here we go. I just took off this big Trident maple air layer, and it's been basically a year-long process. I put it on, well, a year and about 6 or 7 months. I put it on in the early spring of last year, and now it's June 2017. So we'll call it, a year and 4 months. But I'm going to cut this tree down now, knock back the branches and kind of shape it up to make some kind of effect, and then get it potted up. At the base, this tree is about 4 inches, depending on which way you measure it. And let me tell you, yeah, I am jacked up. That's right. It's funny. As I was propping this thing up and moving it about, and I hear these branches breaking and cracking, and I cringed inside. And then I asked myself, what are you tripping about? You're about to cut branches off. But that's the point. I want to cut them off. I don't want them broken. I want to trim them up the way I want them trimmed. But anyway, that's just my little inside joke that I let out. But anyway, I'm going to knock these branches back. I've got my potting bucket in place right now, and I'm not going to add any fertilizer at the moment. Got extra soil here, more soil on the other side of the tree. Once I get it potted up, then I'll move the camera, because I've got this thing rigged up. So hopefully the music's not too loud, you can hear me, and it's just a matter of me getting this thing cut down and into a pot. I pretty much already determined this is going to be the front because of the way the apex rotate and the way the base of the tree looks right now. But again, I've got these two major branches which come kind of out toward the front. So I'll rotate it once I get these branches knocked back, and then I'll look again.
Started it all for her back in 1984, Sade. Hang on to your love. And we got that set started with a real gem from the Isley Brothers, For the Love of You.
Oh, and this air layer is about 6.5 feet tall altogether. The major part of this trunk is about 2.5 feet tall.
Other popular gifts include hammers, wrenches. Are you kidding me? Sounds like we need to put a little bit more thought into those gifts, people. Maybe a nice vice. All right. Guitarist Russ Freeman of the Rippingtons has a lot to thank his dad for. And I bet you never brought him a necktie or a vice. After all, it was Russ's dad who introduced him to the world of music.
Lots of seeds growing here.
All the credit for that. He was
accomplished piano player, and he played classical guitar, and he always loved music. So he turned us on to classical music when we were about 5 years old, and he put instruments in all our hands. His idea was he wanted to have a string quartet with me and my siblings. So I started playing viola when I was about 8 years old. So I always had a love of stringed instruments, and I remember when I was about 9 or so, I wanted to get a red guitar. So he bought me this red guitar, and I started playing at 10, and I just developed a love for it. Not only did he introduce us to classical, but he loved all sorts of music. He loved the Beatles. He turned us on to Creedence Clearwater Revival, the Rolling Stones. We just had always music to listen to.
And we have the elder Mr. Freeman to thank for helping to launch the career of Russ Freeman and the Rippingtons. Here's their latest featuring the vocals of Jeffrey Osborne. This is My Promise to You on the Dave Goz Radio Show. Freeman and the Rippingtons, My Promise to You, with the unmistakable sound of Jeffrey Osborne joining the group for that special track. And Jeffrey Osborne killed it on our cruise last month. There's nobody quite like Jeffrey. He is still woo-woo-wooing. I'm Dave Cos, and all you dads, stay right where you are. There's another hour of music and memories on the way just for you. We're coming right back with more of the special Father's Day edition of the Dave Cos Radio Show.
Welcome to Geico's Motorcycle Meanderings.
Man, this is great. It sure saves a lot of money by switching to Geico. Scored some big savings, and now I can use their rollout 24/7 for all sorts of stuff. Life just makes sense now. You know what doesn't make sense? If a car is called a horseless carriage, why isn't a motorcycle called a horseless horse? Maybe it would just be adding an insult to injury for the out-of-work horses.
Geico Motorcycle. Savings that make sense.
Another breakout? Today? Really? Oh, it's not that bad, they say. I can barely see it. But yeah, right. Get real. It's time for this to end. Thanks to my new Biore baking soda acne scrub with natural baking soda, I can
There's a stump on the bottom of this tree.
Ow. It scrubs out
I'm not
acne causing
messing
dark
with
oil
it.
for clear skin in 2 days.
Um,
So peace out, people. With Biore, I turn this on.
As a matter of fact,
Biore, free your pores.
when I discovered this had rooted, I was just basically going up into my tree. I've got about 6 or 8 black growing pots in the tree for air layers, and a number of sphagnum moss wraps for air layers. And so I was just basically going up to reset, because I'd already checked the plant last year in the fall, and I had no roots. And typically, small roots, you know, they'll develop on the tree, you know, within a month and a half or so, and good viable roots, you know, will set, you know, shortly after that. But because I found this, I had to call a cop. C-O-P. That's right, I had to call a cop. Change of plan. I'm working this now. This is another good birthday present that I've received this month. This is awesome. So anyway, this looks good for a viewing area, but since I've got this pot here, I can plant it that way and take a look, and I can rotate it. And I can rotate the plant any direction I want to take a look from here. So I'm going to try to get it potted up now. I really want to keep that lower branch on there. It's not rooted too bad, because I sure enough would have cut it off. I would have cut it off and done another planting with it, but for right now, can't save it. Cuts like butter. Harbor Freight cheap pull saw.
Welcome back to this special Father's Day weekend edition of the Dave Cos Radio Show with music of Grover Washington Jr., a song that just might describe your dad. Here's Mr. Magic. Had to do it.
I'm going to use a Sawzall and try to get that cut out of there. If I use that pull saw, I'll damage too many roots. Veritable surgeon. It's alive. Look at that roots. It's alive. Got to find a suitable container. Root stimulator. This is the over-the-counter bottle, but I've got Hormidin 3 in here, which is a hard to root rooting powder. So it's kind of a moist, rainy, somewhat rainy day, cloudy, overcast, which is really good for what I'm doing, seeing that it is in June. Typically, I try taking my cuttings out, you know, the rooted cuttings, late June, July, and August, and pot those up. But I can do them any time of the year they root. But something this large, it's just extra good that it's kind of cool around here.
summer side-by-side tour with Larry Graham. You're going to be everywhere, all over the United States. You can continue to see the shows with your hot one, perfect for summer. On Facebook and Twitter, you can find us at Dave Cars Music. Send us a message. Let us know how you like the show. Comments. We want to hear. All right, here's Paul Hardcastle to get this hour of music started with a song that goes out to all of the dads. This one, No Stress.
I shouldn't have to work so hard. But this is a joy. What a treat. What a treat. What an absolute treat. Treat, not tree. Well, it is an absolute awesome treat. Okay, I'll stop gushing right now and get back to what I'm doing. All right. Good perspective right there. Two thoughts. I could leave the canopy way up high, clean all of that stuff down on the bottom, except this branch coming this way, that back branch, and that branch. So clean that out, clean that out, clean these up, clean the bottom here, and regrow there. That looks like my best option. So I think I'll try to bring the top down a little bit, but that'll be kind of difficult at this point. I want to give the tree a chance to rebound. Those roots got to start working now on their own. Of course, they were in the pot doing what they could, but the main tree was really sustaining the lifeline of that particular tree. So, having a thought of what I want to do, I can do a little bit more trimming, but I want to leave what's on the tree right now so that it can start regrowing, get everything established. I'll keep it in shade. This area right here is really good. I've got more area across the way there that's well shaded, and I'll keep it good and moist. Hopefully the rain will come back, and that will aid in the recuperation process of the tree. I was talking with a fella last week at a bonsai auction, and he commented that, well, he asked the question, well, why does rainwater do so much better? Well, you know, one of those open-ended questions, you know, he was kind of making a statement. And I said, well, you know, it seems like the nitrogen in the water from the atmosphere is easily accessible to the plants. And he tried to think of a word, and I said, you mean ionize? The ionization of the atmosphere during the rainstorm, especially a lightning storm, I think it really helps all of the elements, and I don't mean a particular molecule of, you know, nutrients, water, and so forth. I mean all of the factors, all of the elements. It helps to catalyze these things so that the tree responds better to a natural environment. I mean, I water like gangbusters, and my trees just don't look good. But buddy, let me tell you, it's June, I think 17th or 18th now, and we've been having rain for the last week and a half, almost every day, you know, at least a good shower, 10-15 minutes on the least side, and my plants are just thriving. I mean, like awesome. For example, I pull this cutting that's about 3/4 of an inch. I pulled that out last week, potted it up, and had it here under the plum tree in the shade. And look how that thing is just growing. And it's doing so much better than my trees at this time last year, because it was a bit drier. And that's even a Naruto. And you know, as I read and look, and you know, people say Narutos are hard to propagate, and I think that's true, because I think I stuck a 2 or 3 gallon pot full of stems that I pulled last fall and just stuck them in the dirt with nothing on them, and I probably have 3, maybe 4 Narutos out of all of the pieces I stuck. So certain plants are difficult, but not impossible. But yet that one is thriving right now. Yeah, you saw the leaves looking curly, like they're all dried up, but that's the natural habit of that tree. And there you have it. That tree was well over 6 feet when I really raised it up and stood next to it. That trunk at the soil level, again, it's in the 4-inch range. The trunk from the soil level up is about 2.5 feet. And lots of good roots on it right now, lots of branching. So
My dad is a rock star, what can I tell you? He's very wide. He works 5 days a week. He never works at 5-standard work, but runs up and down the same steps all day with heavy tools and pieces of wood, cabinet maker, carpenter. Then he goes out and plays saxophone 4 nights a week, and then he drives motorcycles in the week. I mean, that's what I was doing when I was age. I mean, 86 years old, and he is just absolutely no stopping and no slowing down. And he comes to this meeting twice a year.
and that is how I do it here in Northwest Florida. A lot of times I'll use root stimulator in my water, but I don't have any right now, so I'll use some 0-10-10. Not 0-10-10-10, but 0-10-10 in the water just a little bit. And if I can come up with some other concoction, if I've got some root stimulator, I put that hormone on the place where I cut that one stump off. So that should help it also. Let's go around the front so I can show you where that came from. Just a regular guy doing a regular job of enjoying life. Oh, this right here is small leaf Trident. The leaves have increased a little bit, but for the life of this tree, and I've had it about 6 years now, and they do reduce pretty well. But now that I've got it in the ground here, look at that trunk. That's about 2.5 inches. Yep, pretty nice. And I've taken cuttings. I'm going to try to air layer some of these. A little larger than pencil size, about the size of a Sharpie writer. And I'm going to try to air layer some of those. They're hard to find around, and when I wanted some, I couldn't find any. Every time I did see them listed, they would be out of stock. At any rate, I guess I should have shown the tree. Well, that's where we were working, and you can see a pot there. There are more pots up there, some of the sphagnum wraps. And I've actually cut this tree out, which actually was a good thing. I had no clue. But when it comes to air layering, you want wood that's not so barky and old. Now, yeah, the one I just did is old and barky. It was a main trunk that was growing upward, but even it was a regrowth from when I cut this tree back a number of years ago. And it's only been about 3 years, and I don't know if you can see it here, but this was part of the main upward growing trunk, and this became another shoot that grew out after I cut that off. And it started growing up, and because it had all the energy, it matured and, you know, got more bark. But if you can see the smoothness of the bark here, the outer part compared to these, see how that flakes? And you can see that typical cinnamon look of a Trident. You want to stay with the smoother stuff. It'll root easier for you. And even this over here, that's about 3 inches right there, good. About 2.5 inches, but it's relatively smooth. And because I've got a number of these upward growing branches, and I'm going to take some of these even to root them, just, yeah, stick some rooted cuttings in the fall. Okay, in the fall. I've got several pieces right now that I stuck in the early spring, and they're about as large as that, which is about 1 inch, you know, 1.25 inches at the most. 3/4 of an inch is typical for what I have. And I, you know, again, I took cuttings, used the rooting hormone. That was in the early spring, because and that was because I got the rooting hormone at that time. But when I stick cuttings of good size, you know, 3/4 of an inch to an inch, I have moderate success with it when I do it in the fall. No rooting hormone or anything. So the fall is really a good time. The spring is basically your last good time, and then any other time is just whatever you can do. You know, it's available to you because that's the time you have. Now that's for large cuttings, you know, just little small things like this. You can take cuttings like that anytime, you know, that's not an issue. But anyway, here I am up in the Trident maple. And this Trident, I'll keep saying it every time I make a video, this Trident was a cutting that I took from my bundle of 15 trees that I made bonsai with, and some died, gave some away, sold some, whatever. And I planted this tree in the ground for my children. And so it's been there close to 27 years. But that's the original tree out of the bundle of 15. And that is the top that I cut out of this tree. And I simply rooted that. So I rooted it in a big, it was probably a 5-gallon pot, and then I put it into a big 30-gallon pot, each with soil in it. And I took my tool that I had in my hand, I think it was the loppers at the time, and I just beat the fire out of the base of that. And I might have had some over-the-counter rooting hormone, you know, the real weak stuff that you that you put on plants like gardenia or geraniums and stuff that you don't even need rooting hormone for, that they recommend that you use it. I mean, other than the antibacterial properties, you know. But anyway, that's beside the point. So anyway, I rooted that. Isn't that an awesome nabari? Yeah. Yeah. I was going to cut it down this year to make a shohin out of it, but because this is almost the exact way it came out, I left it that way. And this tree is just growing pretty well. And again, the last out of a bundle of 15, and I had 2 bundles of 15, but the first bundle went before this came around. And 90% of my maples, Tridents, come right from this yard, from seeds from this tree, cuttings from the other 2. I actually pulled up about 100 seedlings out of this grass right here one spring. You know, as I walked back and forth, wasn't quite time to cut the grass yet. I looked down and saw these things. I saw 1 or 2 and said, what's that, you know? And I looked some more, wasn't even thinking about the tree putting out seedlings. And lo and behold, they were Trident seedlings. And so some of my trees are actually the seedlings from that. This is what I was getting ready to do today, reset my air layers. And so I had to change my plans. I might get back around to it. Speaking of seedlings, that's one right there. That's another. They're the same age that I pulled out of this grass. I have them over here in the front yard to visit their old home. No. And so you can kind of get an idea of how large that is. I like growing my trees kind of natural, so whatever shape it kind of takes on of his own. You know, I may bend some branches a little bit just to do a little bit of modification, but the pointy top bonsai branches laid out straight, horizontal, and then developing your branches from that, I don't particularly like that. I let the branches go the way they go, and then I bring other branches off of that. And again, like I said, I do manipulate the branches some, as this right here, I've got it pulled down because I want a wide effect. I want to do another layer of a top coming off of that where I actually have wire on it. And if I can get this to layer over there to put another canopy level here, I'll be good. The tree will be better, but I'll be good. And again, believe it or not, that tree, I hardly ever wired anything on it. I did some wire over the last 2 or 3 years on the outer branches, but as it grew, I grew it in the ground, and I undercut it several times a year. So in other words, I partially cut the roots 3 months to 6 months, depending on how I felt, what I was doing, and all of that. But, you know, kind of keeping a mental record, I would go back and undercut another quarter of the roots. So it was my plan to undercut that 4 times a year. And then the next year I would actually dig the plant up and reset it. So I'd turn it in the ground to a different position toward the sun. And that's how I grew it for a number of years. And after so many years, I actually had it in this bin. That's my Chinese bird plum, Sagittarian. I actually had it in this bin, had it labeled with this date. It's all faded out now. And then the pot that it's in now, I picked up at a bonsai place in Orlando, Ocala, about 3 years ago now, maybe 4. And so, and I just brought it out to the front from across there late last year. Well, at any rate, that's the massive mega Trident air layer. And I'm going to work on cutting this thing down some more, bringing it back in, and we'll see how it goes. But with little doubt in my mind, the tree is probably going to be cut back in these branches, probably to this fork, or maybe, you know, a few of these, and just brought back in either this year or next year, depending on how it looks to me. I'm going to take all of these seed pods off and get it all watered up. So anyway, this is just my joy. This is what I enjoy doing, and I love sharing it. All right, bye.